website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should mute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice for public comment guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you. And Terry Ann, could you now conduct the roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Arnridge,
Sorry, here.
Commissioner Butt,
Here.
Commissioner Geringer. Did not see yet. Commissioner Hudson,
Here.
Commissioner Haskew,
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Here.
Commissioner Nowak,
Here.
Commissioner Thor, I did not see, Commissioner White,
Here.
okay, Vice Chair Glover, I don't see, Chair Kelly,
Here.
Representative Foley,
Present.
Representative Peoples,
I see him.
I see you waving, thank you. Representative Worth,
Here.
okay, we have everyone present with the exception of Commissioners Geringer, Thor, and Vice Chair Glover.
Great, thank you. So we have a quorum.
We
So
do
our
have-
next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Commissioner Arnridge. Could you please mute your mic during the pledge?
Will you please join me by placing your right hand over your heart and repeat after me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, too.
Thank you. So our next item here is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Terry Ann, have we received any written public comment?
We have not received any written public comment.
And is there anyone wishing to speak here at the meeting on public comment on an item that is not part of the agenda? If so, please raise your hand and Terry Ann will call on you. Terry Ann, do you see anyone?
No hands raised.
Okay, so we'll move on. We do not have any presentations this evening. So our next item is the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? No. Are there any comments on the consent? Terry Ann, do we have any written public comments for the consent items?
No written public comment.
Okay, and if anybody from the public would like to speak, please raise your hand. Terry Ann, do you see anyone?
No hands raised.
Okay, so bringing it back, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve, but
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Noah.
Okay, so a motion by Butt, seconded by Nowak. Any discussion? Terry Ann, could you conduct a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Arnridge,
Aye.
Commissioner Butt,
yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes?
Okay, motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Geringer, Thorpe, and Vice Chair Glover absent.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So we're now on to our regular agenda items. And the first item tonight from the Administration and Projects Committee is to be presented by Brian Kelleher to discuss the interfund loan policy for the authority.
Good
Brian?
evening. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Tonight, I'm going to talk about the interfund loan policy. Let me pull up the share screen real quick. Okay, tonight we're seeking approval of the authority's interfund loan policy, office procedure number 16, resolution 2210A. Really quick, I'm going to give you some background information. A lot of the board members there already know how CCTA was formed, but maybe the general public that's here tonight does not. Measure J is a half-cent countywide sales tax that was established in 2004. It runs for about 25 years. And the Measure J strategic plan that was adopted tonight on the consent calendar, it guides the timing of Measure J expenditures based on assumptions and about future sales tax revenues, debt service costs on bonds, and project schedules. And Sean does a wonderful job pulling this all together. And we've been mentioning for the last several years. And as we went through the early pandemic, we had some early concerns about cash flow measures, but we do a lot of external loans. We went out and we were able to do a number of bonds to deliver a lot of our projects from the capital project side ahead of schedule. And utilizing all of these grants and all of the bonds that we have done has allowed us to deliver so many projects that so many citizens in Contra Costa uses. And right now, the CCTA is looking at advancing innovative ideas with the agency, doing things on the Innovative 680 project and a number of things in your cities as well. And in order for the authority to do this, we have to go out and we utilize a lot of grants. Right now, I think we have pretty close to about 27 to 30 active grants. The largest ones are most likely the ADS and the MOD grant that we're doing on the Innovate 680 project. But in addition to that, there's a lot of capital projects that we get federal and state and local funding from. And in order to deliver these projects, we need to, there's a timing associated with when we get reimbursed. And based off of all of the grants, based off of the timing in the capital projects that we're doing, waiting on federal and state funding, it's now at a time for CCTA to utilize some of the resources that we've accumulated over the years since we started Measure J to help fund and complete and stay active, getting grants, having matching funds, and moving the needle forward for CCTA. And just as an overview, you know, for the half cent that we get, 42.5% of the sales tax revenue we get goes to capital projects. Local streets, maintenance, bus, transportation for seniors, a lot of this is return to source funds. We have debt service that's associated with the bonds that we have. So right out of the bat at the beginning of the year and through the budget cycle that we'll discuss next in the next budget and next item tonight, we're putting out about 60% of our money in return to source and to debt service. So think of all of these individual programs that have been established by the Transportation Expenditure Plan through the adoption of Measure J. They're little individual checkbooks that hold the money. They're special funds that hold all the money for each thing, and so that we can deliver, you know, to all of the region. And it's all spelled out in the tax expenditure plan. Everybody gets an equal share through this process. And what we're trying to do now is utilize some of the funds that have accumulated in some of the programs, like in the middle of the page, ferry service, $15 million have accumulated. Transportation for Livable Communities project, 17 million. Right there, there's about $32 million of resources that will help us as we continue to deliver these transportation projects. And on the interim financials that also were on the consent tonight, you could see transportation projects were overcommitted about 5.8 million. We're not truly like overcommitted, but it's a timing of getting some of these reimbursements. So if we establish a loan policy, we can borrow funds at the end of the year. That means that there's 4 different programs that we're suggesting and we'll follow. And there could be the possibility of doing a short-term loan or short-term borrowing from the ferry service for potentially, in this case, $5.9 million until we have additional resources come in, until we get some reimbursements. And in just the last 2 weeks, we've received about $7 million in external funding. And it's part of the financial process. And what we want to do is just make sure that when we close the books at the end of the fiscal year, we have enough resources in those programs. The authority has plenty of resources available, but each project and program is guided a little bit different. And we want to just do some internal borrowing and setting up a loan policy that sets up some guidelines. Prohibited uses, that's, number one for me is the interfund loans is not used to solve an ongoing problem. It's a temporary Band-Aid to look at. Let's just get through the process. If there needs additional money, we will always come back to the board. We can always go out and do a private placement if needed. We'll look for other resources, and we never want to hinder any of the programs that are there. And any money that is borrowed on a short term, we'll have some interest paid back to make sure that they remain whole. The policy is going to require board approval. Anytime we do some interfund transfers or due froms, we'll start with the executive director. I'm looking more so in number 2 and number 3. That's what I see the authority using most as we close out this fiscal year in the next couple of weeks. And as we close out the books through the month of August, I could see us doing a short-term loan, most likely number 2, utilizing some funds from the ferry service to cover some delay in getting some reimbursements. Again, the timing of reimbursements is really key here. And so interfund loans, payables, we'll go to the board and make sure that we get full approval. This is in no way for us to utilize resources without being 100% transparent. It's just us setting up a roadmap of how to utilize the funds that CCTA has and be transparent with you and the community on what our financial needs are moving forward. So with that, we're seeking approval of Resolution 2210A, Office Procedure Number 16, the Authority's Interfund Loan Policy. I'm available for any questions if needed.
Thank you, Brian. And can we come back to, so I can see everybody on the view? Okay, are there any questions from anyone? Sue?
So my only question is there enough foresight on, let's say, the ferry service and things as to when they might need those funds to make sure that we don't get caught anywhere having an interfund loan transfer and then the ferry service, let's say, needing some of those funds, yet not having them available to them?
For example, using the ferry service right now, and Peter's here, Tim can help us as well. But right now, in the next couple of fiscal years, there's not a true commitment of additional funds. Off the top of my head, as we get into the budget as one of the next items, I think the budget is about $3.5 million for our annual contribution. And I think we put in there about 2.5 every year for the subsidy. So we're utilizing potentially $1 million a year. There's also the TLC program, and there's a couple other little ones in there that if we had to, we could utilize some of those funds. Again, with our excellent credit rating, there would be, if we ran into a problem, we could go out and we could do a private placement. I could see that happening potentially, and if needed, that would probably be the best route if it was a long-term borrowing. But then again, we're looking at about 12 years left on Measure J, and we all know that the money's going to accumulate and it's going to take several years past 2034 to deliver all these programs. But that's my thought process today.
Okay, thank you. Newell?
Yeah, I was just going to add, historically, the agency has actually kind of done this in the past. For example, borrowing STIP funds from one region to the other, just because of the timing that there was a match that would come up. So we took advantage of the match and moved those funds around. What I think this really is looked at is a way to formalize the process and make it a conscious, very transparent effort. And the net result is everybody is still whole, but we certainly don't want to miss a federal or state grant when it comes up. And what it means is we generally have the cash. We still even have some Measure C money that we can use as a cash management tool. And what's Brian's saying, the backstop would be take advantage of the millions of dollars we may get from a matching fund. And even if we had to do a short-term loan to cover that short, but in the end result, all the money is still there. It's not spending money that we don't have. It's a matter of the timing of when it comes in. So I think if you think about it that way, one, we've been doing it, since Measure J has been around. So, but a very transparent and a very formal way. And I think from the auditor point of view, that's really what makes this work, is that now that there's a perfect trail, there was an action, a decision, and it went through a documentation to get us there. So.
Thank you. Luella, did you have a question or comment? No? So Brian, I have a question, and that is, have we done this before? Is this the first time that you're proposing a policy?
We have not technically done this before. It's just establishing a policy, as Hisham has been talking about. There's a pinch point in the strategic plan. Obviously, we've been really lucky the last few years, and especially this year with sales tax revenues being high. There's extra resources. Again, CCTA is evolving in the transportation industry, and now that we've done the majority of capital projects that we've had established through the strategic plan, there's also the innovative side of CCTA, and there's all these additional things that CCTA is doing with the grants, and so it becomes a timing mechanism. We're not overextending ourselves. It's the timing of reimbursements and utilizing CCTA's resources to make sure we continue to be on the forefront, delivering projects as fast as we can, utilizing the resources we have at hand.
Yeah, I completely understand. On a much smaller scale, my city's doing something kind of similar. Will we be receiving kind of like an update, maybe at least once a year about this? Are you going to let us know, like, what fund we borrowed from, and
yeah,
when
of
we
course,
paid it back, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so when we deliver the audit report in hopefully in December, we'll come back, and if we're utilizing this program, we will highlight it. It'll never be just adopted and sit there and used. It will always be, you will be brought into the light. It's not a tool for finance to go out and do things. We will always make the division, the projects, whoever loans the money, the program, they will get the money back in full, and they will get interest as well. And it's never a tool to move money around and circumvent any system.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Terry Ann, do we have any written public comments on this item?
No written public comments.
And is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this? If so, please raise your hand now. Terry Ann, do you see anybody who wants to speak?
No hands raised.
Okay, then we have a resolution before us, 22-10-A. Would someone like to make a motion? Newell?
I would do so. Just to reiterate, we did look at this and asked all those same questions at APC. And again, it's a great tool, formalizes it, really good for our auditors and management. I'd be delighted to move this item as presented here tonight. And thank you, Brian.
Okay, so motion by Arnrich, second by Haskew.
Yes.
Okay, any discussion? Terry Ann, can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Arnrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Geringer, Thorpe, and Vice Chair Glover absent.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So our next item here is an action item that requires a public hearing, and it's the adoption of the fiscal year 2022-23 proposed budget for the authority and the Congestion Management Agency. And after the staff's presentation and our comments, then we will open the public hearing. So Brian, you take it away.
Okay, tonight I'll be doing the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2022-2023. In the staff report, we go through and we discuss all of the projects and programs and all of the revenue sources and sales tax information as well. So in there as well as this little snapshot. And what this does is this just gives you the really great summary of our revenues and which projects and programs are utilizing the resources that we have. Sales tax revenue for 2021-22 that we amended in March, that brings the sales tax up to $108 million. And currently, as I mentioned at APC, we went through this presentation as well. Our sales tax revenues are really doing well, and all of your cities are probably seeing that as well. And so our projection of $108 million is truly probably by the end of August, when we get the final numbers in as we close out the second quarter of 2022 on a calendar basis, we're probably going to see about $112 million. With all of the inflation and all of the concerns about the next recession that may or may not be coming in the next few months or the next couple of years. And many of you know that with the interest rates going up, and today another 3/4 points, and last week all the information it was coming out about inflation. There's a lot of concern, and I don't think any one of us can singly say what the economy is going to do in the next 3 months, or let alone the next year. So when we put this together and we worked with HDL on our sales tax presentation, we wanted to stay with something really conservative and something that we could really give all of the agencies that we do the return to source funds on a number that we could really stand behind. It's about $110 million for next year. If you look at the federal, state, and local revenues, you're looking at about $50 million of external funding. And again, as we just adopted the interfund loan policy and we looked at the strategic plan tonight on the consent calendar, there's a lot of funding out there. There's a lot of great projects that we're doing, like the San Ramon project. We'll discuss that a little bit as we go through the presentation as well. That would fall under local revenues. We also have some state revenues on that project as well. Other sources as we're looking at the interfund loan policy, there's an accumulation of cash resources, and that happens since the adoption of Measure J. And as this money sits in there, the timing of the projects and programs that we're doing on the non-return to source funds is utilized, and we're budgeting for some of those projects and programs in this year. And so that's why you can see $17 million potentially being utilized. Again, we budget for the projects division. You can see that it's coming in at about $47 million. It's a decrease of about $8.3 million. As we all know, the 684 was a great success for CCTA and for the general public. And with that one closing out, and before it gets to the next couple phases of expansion, you can see there's a reduction of $8 million. The program section is increasing $12.6 million. Well, a lot of those increases are the return to source. It's the sales tax revenue, and it gets paid out. But again, we have the San Ramon project. The San Ramon project, I believe, is about $9.6 million in there that's utilizing San Ramon funds as well as some STIP funds in there paying it. And so that's the increase there. The planning section is an increase of about $1 million, and they got some one-time programs, VMT, and we got some other studies, and we'll touch on those a little bit as we go through the presentation. The administrative section is up about $206,000. Again, that's salary related. We also have our rents that's increasing. And then we also have debt service. Our debt service is increasing because in June of 2021, we refinanced and we fixed out our debt service. And when we did that, we paid a lot of interest in that June, and we didn't have to pay any in last fiscal year. So now we're catching up, and this is our year of maximum annual debt service. So as we go into the future, the debt service number is going to come down. I think it's about $1.4 million less for the following fiscal year, but we're adopting $45 million this year. So our total expenditures budget is going to be about $178,000. And again, as we kind of talked about sales tax, this is just a little snapshot of the last few years of kind of where we've been. But again, we're exceeding what we put in the strategic plan as far as sales tax dollars, and that's a good sign. Capital projects, we're looking at all of our external funding. Here's some of our funding sources in a little snapshot. Capital projects, we're Innovate 680, $7.4 million of revenue that's set aside for that. The McCollum overcrossing, we have about $4.8 million. That's going to come from ECRFA. ECRFA, and thanks to Hisham and working with them, we utilized a method of, they gave us an $11 million deposit for that project. So we're not going to be seeking reimbursement. We have that money. So as the quarters end, every quarter, we're going to finish the working on that project, and we're just going to use that money that's sitting in a deposit account, and it'll become revenue as the project moves forward. We'll recognize it as the project is completed. We also have STIP funding and other funding, other miscellaneous funding from small city grants and working with other agencies. We see some money coming through. The planning, the congestion management, and the PDA funding, we get a federal surface transportation. It's always about 1.1 million. It fluctuates just a little bit from year to year to deliver and monitor a lot of the programs that the authority does. We also have contributions from MTC, where there was a study for the SR4 Express Lane study. That's $50,000. It's not a lot of money, but it's a study that we are leading for MTC. So we're the agency that's doing the work. They're contributing some of the money. We seem to be doing a lot more of that, working with other agencies and us taking the lead on it. The CMA local agencies, $480,000. That's split among the county and all of the cities for all of us to do the CMA functions. And so when we deliver on an annual basis, we have external funding like the federal surface transportation money and some other funding that comes in, and total expenditures minus our revenues becomes, $480,000 that's split among all of the cities. Motor vehicle surcharge, the TFCA program, that's 1.6 million that comes in. We do utilize about 6.2% of that. We use for admin support here at CCTA, and then the rest of it is used to deliver the projects and programs outlined in there. We also have a contribution as a revenue source of $333,000 from a deposit that we received from GoMenum many years ago, and those funds will be utilized to continue the ITS support out at GoMenum. City of San Ramon, $6.7 million for the Iron Horse Trail crossing. That's city and STIP funding for that project. If we look at the capital project funding, we also have the expenditures. We have $42.4 million in capital project funding for our top categories 1 through 9. Caldecott Tunnel, all the way through the Richmond Parkway. There's nine different capital projects that are set out in the tax expenditure plan. And as we get some overhead costs, the costs are spread by the consultants on things that are for the project and programs that are spread to all of these individuals. So there you can see the Caldecott Tunnel. We all know, we've been driving through it, and it's all been, the projects are closed, but the ongoing delivery of all of the capital project program, you see some expenditures in there as well. And so as we have $42.4 million of expenditures, we have external funding sources that are going to come in and help pay for all of this, that we do the reimbursements. And as I mentioned, there's about 27 programs that we're seeking reimbursement on right now. That's a lot, and it's grown quite a bit in the last couple of years, which is why we did the interfund loan policy. And at the end of the year, if all of our budgets come to meet what we're projecting, it's about a $7.7 million use of Measure J programmed funds for that particular fiscal year. And if we look at the capital projects for the Measure J, again, that's about $45 million if we add in the sub-regional and countywide capital maintenance programs. And you can see from year to year where some of the changes are. I had mentioned right in the middle of the page, CIP 6, $22 million to $11 million. That's down to, $11.3 million decrease. Again, as I mentioned, that was the closeout of the project. SR4 bypass elements, McCollum's going to start working on next year. There's the increase. I-680 corridor, there's an increase of $4.5 million in the middle of the page from 13 to $17.8 million. That's the delivery of the new projects that they're projecting to do. And I do at this time, I work a lot with Hisham and a lot with the projects team. And as we start the budgeting process, I usually say this at the beginning, but I forgot. You know, I work with John and we get the CMA budget delivered, and I work extensively with Hisham and Stephanie and many other members at CCTA and all of the consultants, and we deliver all of this. It's a lot of hard work to get this little summary, little snapshot. So thank you to all of them for helping me get to this point. Authority salaries and benefits is going up $647,000. You know, at first you would say, why are we going up so high? Well, we have CPI, which is 3.5%. That's about $177,000, but we're also adding CCTA staff. We're adding another individual to be the mobility manager. I just hired a finance manager. You might see Yuli's name on here as well. And so she's been with us for a few weeks. And so we're backfilling some empty positions, and we're preparing for the future and the different things that we're doing. The biggest notes that every city and every agency that is part of CalPERS is, what is your unfunded liability? How much do you pay for your employees on your unfunded side? And so for our classic employees, we're going from 10.34% to 10.32%. That's not much of a change, but if you look at a lot of cities, we're very small agencies, so we pay just a little bit amount compared to a lot of the agencies that have the burden of police and fire as well. Our annual OPEB contribution, we're fully funded on there. We're actually super funded as of last year, but I do want to keep it really low. I do want to keep it at 2%, so we're continuing to put money aside. We can at any point stop paying into it as we're super funded until we get to a point where we're about 100% funded. We'll want to restart it. But my goal is to always put a little bit away just so that it doesn't get forgotten. And then one day somebody looks at this and says, hey, we have this huge unfunded liability. And so that's the reason why it's 2% there. Administration, we have salaries and benefits. As we have the 1% limitation set by the tax expenditure plan. Right now we're sitting at about 754,000, and based off of our revenue projection of 110 million, that leaves us at about 0.68% of the 1% limitation. And we are building a reserve in there. Should the authority, and when the authority gets to 2034, we'll have sufficient resources to pay for people after we stop collecting sales tax. There's an increase in property tax lease. It's going up about $80,000. In our lease, when we signed the lease, when we moved into our new office space many years ago, we had a free month rent. That was, I think, our 132nd month. So therefore, we only paid 11 months last year. We're paying 12 months, and we're now paying up to about $40,000 a month for our offices there. Information systems replacement, our Zoom rooms, they're not 100% completed, but we're making some advancements, and by the end of this month we'll have the Diablo room completed, and we'll also have a lot of the equipment inside the chambers there for when we all get back to the office, and most likely in September everything will be completely and good to go. We also have a $50,000 increase for public engagement services as we're moving out, and we're not moving out, we're moving on and getting out into the public a lot more. The programs division is $76.8 million, an increase of 12.6. And again, you know, the San Ramon Iron Horse Trail Crossing is making up $9.6 million of that increase. We also have return to source funds. As the sales tax revenues go up, so does our payout. Several program budgets were revised to reflect current commitments. The TFCA program, as I mentioned, we collect 1.6 million, we pay out about 1.6 million. The Momentum project is a special revenue fund that we have money that's sitting in a deposit account in there, and we're utilizing about $332,000 for that. The planning division, every so often, every couple of years, they have to do a bunch of studies and budget planning. And so there will be increases some years and there'll be decreases the next year. And so this year we're seeing about $1 million increase. There's the bi-county activity-based model development. It's costing about $1 million. But we're also going to receive about $500,000 of revenue in there on that. The regional planning support, action plan updates, streetlight data that we're doing, and the on-call support is about $2.1 million. BMT mitigation and Vision Zero implementation is about $575,000. Salaries and benefits for state planning, programming, and monitoring. That's the set of funds that we receive. It's about $356,000. So when we receive the $356,000, we allocate staff members like Hisham and some of the planning staff and Lindsay as well, and Stephanie to help deliver these programs, and part of their salaries are paid by that. Several contracts and studies are partially funded by grant revenues, and I already mentioned the $500,000 for the bi-county model, MTC, SR4 express lane studies. And then we come to debt service. One of the most expensive things we have is debt service, but that allowed us to deliver all the projects and programs in the past. The principal amount is $26.3 million. The interest amount due is $8.7 million. The biggest item that's changed from last year is, we reduced our risk and we don't have any risk. We have fixed debt service and we can really plan for the future that you saw in the strategic plan. Total debt service is 41% of the $110 million of sales tax revenue. So with that, staff seeks approval of Resolution 2208A, which will adopt the fiscal year budget for 22-23 for $178.4 million. And if any of you have some questions, I'd be happy to share some of my knowledge. And I know Hisham and Tim can help out if I need a little bit of help.
Thank you, Brian. That was great. Great summary. So are there questions here or comments from the board? If so, please raise your hand. Yeah, Dave?
Brian, that is about as thorough as you can. I mean, I'm half tempted to half jokingly say, I missed most of that. Could you repeat it? But it was straightforward. And anytime you want to mention the 9.6 million for San Ramon, you just go for it. I'm fine with it. I usually leave it to the administration to make the motion, but I think we're good.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments from the board? No? Okay, so we're going to open the public hearing using my gavel. The public hearing is now open. And is there anyone from the public who wishes to make a comment? Terry Ann, do we have anyone wanting to make a comment at all?
No written public comment was received, and I don't see any hands raised as well.
Okay, all right. And we received any written public comments on the budget?
No written public comment.
Okay, so then we've received no written comment. Okay, so we will now close the public hearing for this item 8B for the fiscal year 2022-23 proposed budget for the authority and the Congestion Management Agency. And do I hear a motion? Newell?
Yeah, I would just add a comment. We did look at this at APC and spent a lot of time on it. And Brian was on top of absolutely everything. So really, really well done. And our agency is in such great shape. When you note that we're one of the few agencies that our contribution rates for PERSs went down. And remember, we're slightly overfunded on OPED for the health costs. So we're set up as an agency that might sunset. We are exactly on track. So with that, I'd be very proud to recommend and move this item as presented tonight.
Okay, so a motion by Arnich. Is there a second?
Second, Hudson.
Second by Hudson. Any discussion? Terry Ann, can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Arnrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Geringer, Thorpe, and Vice Chair Glover absent.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And Brian, I want to thank you so much. I agree. That was really, really superb. Great. And a great summary, too. Okay, so we're going on to one more item. And this will be presented by Hisham Noemi to authorize an amendment to the agreement with Advanced Mobility Group for program and project management services. Hisham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. I'm happy to present this item. As mentioned by the chair, staff is seeking authorization for the chair to execute amendment number 1 to agreement number 526 with AMG in the amount of $8,737,423 for a new total agreement value of $26,797,910. The project and program management consultant has, as you know, acted historically as an extension of authority staff. This allowed us to deliver a large and complex program despite our relatively small size. Just in the past month, AMG spearheaded the effort of putting together the mega grant application, seeking $395 million in federal funds for the I-680 projects. This is a very complex application that required a lot of resources. We would not have been able to do it without AMG help. And so it are many other tasks that the authority does. I also want to note that AMG helps all departments at the authority, including planning, finance, programs, external affairs, and projects. Our current agreement with AMG was approved by the board back in June 2019 after going through an RFP process. This allowed AMG to provide their services for a 3-year period that started on July 1st, 2019, and will be ending on June 30th, 2022. The RFP gave the authority the option to extend the contract by up to 2 years. Extending the agreement now ensures that we have continuity of work on project development and closeout activities, continuation of support on the TDM program, and advancement of the authority Intelligent Transportation System program. Approving the amendment will allow AMG to assist the authority with numerous tasks, including the closeout of constructed contracts and projects such as the widening of Highway 4, the interchange at Balfour and Highway 4, as well as the recently opened I-680 southbound carpool lane. They will also help us with the oversight of projects development activities on the future phases of the 684 interchange, the Iron Horse Trail overcrossing at Bollinger Canyon Road, which we're about ready to go to construction on that, as well as project development activities on the State Route 239, as well as others. They will also assist us with fund programming functions, including grant applications, as well as continuation of projects controls activities and development of the quarterly project status reports. And last but not least, with their help, the authority ITS program basically will be able to advance based on the new vision for Momentum. Attachment B to the staff report shows some of the milestones we were able to achieve in the past 3 years with AMG help. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. We do have Habib and Frank from AMG attending this meeting. Habib is the principal in charge for the contract, and Frank is the contract project manager. They are assisted by numerous staff members doing all the work that we do. With that, I'll be happy to answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Hisham. Are there questions here from the board? Any comments? Boy, yeah, Dave Hudson.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Maybe it's just I'm single-minded here. I keep focusing on, yeah, let's start that overpass. But it isn't just that. There were 3 overpasses planned. And I hope we can go all the way to what the original plan was. Noel will have to tell me. It has to be like 12, 14 years ago we started on this. This one on Bollinger was the priority. We never let up. I mean, I've been after this 30 years in this city, but Crow Canyon already has $2 million towards it. And I hope if just by bringing it up, Noel, any opportunity comes up in this money to include Sycamore on it, let's jump on it also. We might actually see the completion of what we were talking about a dozen years ago. So great job. Yeah, all for it. Money's always good.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody else have questions or comments? No, Terry Ann, have we received any written public comments?
No written public comment.
And is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak? If so, please raise your hand.
No verbal comments either.
Okay, so bringing it back then, do I have a motion to approve this amendment to agreement 526 with AMG?
So moved, Hudson. I
Okay,
had a
by
moment
Hudson.
too.
Seconded, is there a second?
Second, Noack?
Okay, motion by Hudson, second by Noack. Any discussion? Seeing none, Terry Ann, can you call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Arnrich,
Aye.
Commissioner Butt,
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Yeah.
Commissioner
Yes.
Nowak,
Yes. Sorry, yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Geringer, Thorpe, and Vice Chair Glover absent.
great, thank you. And we really appreciate the work that AMG does for us. It's a great, great help. So moving ahead, we have no regular agenda items for the Planning Committee. So that brings us to correspondence. There's one letter in our board packet to MTC providing comments on the TOC policy update. Are there any questions about this?
No, both letters, I just say both letters to MTC, the one you wrote, Chris, and to the comment, those are really well done. Thank you for that.
I think everybody had a lot of input and discussion and comments about this too, and we thank you. Amy? Please unmute yourself,
you.
Amy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add to Newell's comments and just really thanking staff for your hard work with all of the planning directors. And, we're in round 2 and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to make this policy one that will work for, the tremendous variety of cities in terms of size and capacity and that we have in Contra Costa County. So, and just know Contra Costa County cities have, and the CCTA have done a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of really doing the deep analysis of the policies and how they would impact our transportation projects. And just from, the discussion during this meeting, you can see how important these grant funds are to our communities that are utilizing those funds to make important investments. And especially in light of the RENA requirements, it's really important that our cities be able to compete and receive these funds. So I just again want to thank Tim and the staff for an incredible work on this in reaching out to the cities to really get the perspective on the ground. It's been very, very helpful in making the arguments about modifying the policies that have been the draft policies. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Any other comments on the letter? No? Okay, so moving ahead, in your packets, we have reports from TransPAC and WICTAC and a cancellation notice from SWAT. So you can read all of those. So we're moving on then to Authority Board and staff comments. And tonight I actually do have some comments. So I want to say that last week, Tim Hale, Jack Hall, and Habib Shamsko and I went to Florida to Lake Nona outside Orlando to see autonomous shuttles in real operation at Beep. And I got to tell you, this was very exciting and very cool. And I came back totally jazzed. We rode in 2 shuttles. One is the local motors shuttle and the other one was a Navia shuttle. Both take about 8 or 10 people. There's an attendant in there because of course they're not totally autonomous yet. And the shuttles go around to defined routes around this community. Lake Nona is about 17 square miles. It's totally planned community. There's residential, there's like a wilderness park kind of thing. And then there's kind of a downtown area. And when you're riding on the shuttle, there are different stops that it goes to. It takes you around and you're in a real world situation, which was so cool. So we were going through neighborhoods. We were coming up to stop signs. We crossed through signals. We saw the shuttle react at times, a bird flew by, it kind of slowed down. We came up on a FedEx truck in the other lane and it kind of slowed a bit there. And it's learning how to operate in the real world. We were going about 12 miles an hour. Cars were going around us. And, compared to Gomentum, this was wonderful for me because I could see how it could really, really operate. So Beep does this, and people in the community, about 20,000 who live there, they actually take this shuttle. So there's a veterans home there. They might could take it from their residences over to the Veterans Center, or they'll take it from their residences, for example, in the evening. Like one of the folks at Beep said, maybe a group of family of 5 will hop on the autonomous shuttle and go into the city center to go to the restaurants and to enjoy that. And if they were going to, eat and drink, then they don't have to worry about driving and they don't have to worry about parking. So it was a controlled setting, but it was a real world setting. And I found this absolutely fascinating and really exciting. And I wish I could have one in my neighborhood because I would definitely use it. And, when I think, I've been on the board of Westcat for a long time. And right now we are experiencing a real driver shortage of bus drivers. It's really hard to find. And trucking companies are having trouble finding truck drivers. So autonomous shuttles can really, kind of fill a gap. And as Tim has talked about, fill that gap for the first and last mile. So we're very, very excited and we're very interested in Beep. And it was a wonderful trip. Do you want to add anything, Tim?
Gotta find the mute button. Yeah, I would say one interesting thing about Beep is they actually have a full-blown command center where they actually have all the shuttles mapped out in sort of a TMC dashboard. And so they're able to monitor exactly what's happening with each of the shuttles, what's happening inside the shuttles, but also they're able to take remote control over the shuttles if they encounter odd situations. And this is really important as you're kind of moving into, level 4 operations. And so it was an exciting tour. We learned a lot. And we're learning more about this as we're, implementing the automated driving system grant and our mobility on demand grant.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really cool. And I know some of you may know that I keep bugging Tim about, when a shuttle's going to come to Rossmore, when a shuttle's going to come out to Bishop Ranch, because I really want to see it in operation with real world people. So it was great. So I see Karen, you want to make a comment? We're kind of moving on to board director comments.
Yes, and I'm being very selfish here. As many of you know, I'll be leaving the board at the end of the year, and I'm looking around at my colleagues, and I think I see Mayor Butt is someone else who will be leaving, but the rest of you get to stay on. Lucky you. So I want to use the term that I use for my staff, and that is once a director, always a director. So Mr. Hale, as the George Jetson stuff keeps moving along, I'm asking that you don't forget those of us who've been here and that we would like to be part of any of this fun stuff moving forward.
100% agree. Always, once a board member, always a board member.
Cool. Yeah. And we won't forget you. Dave, you're raising your hand?
Either that or I'm just doing my parade wave. The amazing thing to me is I didn't go to the same place in Florida, but the APTA conference in Florida, the one we have every 3 years, was highlighting these kind of shuttles. And anyone that's on a board, 3CTA, Tri-Delta, Westcat, you really need to put it down on your calendar right now for next October to go back there. Because this is how it was previously when we first started seeing these autonomous vehicles. It's like all of a sudden, or the bike sharing might even be a better example. We couldn't get anybody to do these things for a couple of years, and all of a sudden you had to throw 5 or 6 out to get it down to a dozen to choose from. And it appears, you're telling me about Beep, that was to get there, just wowed me to no end. And they could do double the speed, and they seem to be on top of it. So, and you're dealing with the glideways. These things are coming up. You'll be able to see these things and ride on them if you go back to the APTA conference, the big 3-year expo next year. They'll all be there.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty cool. And, it's got a real world application, which I think, it's not just toys. It really, and I was talking with my city manager, he used to be down in Foster City, and he was looking into autonomous vehicles and some around some of these big business parks there for the different tech companies. Because again, you can't find drivers. Tim, you wanted to say something?
I'm just going to say deployment is coming very soon to Contra Costa County. So we should start seeing this stuff sometime next year as part of the automated driving system grant, the mobility on demand grant. So it's gonna be a really exciting time next year to actually see this stuff in deployment with actual people inside these vehicles.
Just make sure they can go over that bridge in San Ramon. Weight restriction.
The vehicles are learning, I think they're definitely learning. They kind of reminded me at age 15 and a half with my grandmother in a Ford Falcon, just learning to drive, so it was pretty cool. Okay, so moving on, are there any other comments from the board commissioners?
I can't get the Ford Falcon out of my mind.
A black Ford Falcon with my grandma. Yeah. 1960s.
Right up there with the Utopia cars at Disneyland. It's just like our youth, Chris. I love it. Sorry, I can't for interrupting, but soon I think Dave and I are just cracking up here.
Okay, so any comments from commissioners? Any comments from representatives? No? Quiet. Okay, Tim, you've got the floor for your executive director report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've been really busy. I kind of call it hustle on the hill. So Chair Kelly and I and Lindsay and Mark Watts were up in Sacramento last week. We were talking about the 3 bills that we approved an opposed letter this evening to for Assembly Member Bill 1778 and 2237, 2438, and really talk to the Assembly Member Trans Committee, Senate Trans Committee, and our members about how these bills are going to be impacting self-help counties across the state. We also talked about SB 917 and some of the concerns that our transit operators have around that bill as well with our members as well as Cal STA. And we met with Senator Glazer, Assemblymember Grayson, Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, as well as the CTC Executive Director. And primarily the trip was also to focus on our TRCP application and really promote it for funding. Also get more insights on what's happening with the state budget and potential augmentation for more transportation funding. And then we were able to also promote our project, so Innovate 680. And Caltrans is actually going to be submitting and planning to submit a transit corridor enhancement program application for I-80 San Pablo Dam Road phase 2. So we were also promoting that project as well as bus on shoulder, glideways, DPMT, as well as a lot of the innovation that's happening at Momentum Station. We're also requesting more funding for operations and also talking to Cal STA about a stronger partnership with the DOT at Momentum Station. The other thing that happened is this week we went to DC, and that was a really interesting trip because we actually did a joint trip with MTC staff and commissioners. And we were there promoting the overall federal regional strategy. And so I think in the handout this evening, you've got the support, the letter that we sent thanking them for the regional strategy and support for the mega grant for the $395 million. And it was really interesting to really be part of this group to really share how we've come together and on a set of priority projects. And it was very well received by our senators, our representatives, and really makes their life a lot easier when we're in this more federal regional strategy. We also talked about updates with FTA and others on the automated driving system grant, the mobility on demand grant. We started teeing up future grant opportunities for electrification. Also talked about workforce development around electrification and some of the needs there based on our experience in delivering the California Energy Commission grant in Richmond, Pittsburgh, and Concord. We talked a lot about Vision Zero, Momentum Station, as well as started teeing up potential bringing the Proving Ground designation back with this administration to bring more formula funding into innovation. So that was a really busy couple weeks with all of the traveling, but very well received, and I thought very needed in terms of supporting our mega grant and working with our members. Terry Ann has been coordinating with a number of you on our Innovate 680 board meetings. We also put a hold and save the date on all of your calendars for September 15th and 16th for upcoming board retreat. And we will have some special guests at the board retreat. And that board retreat is really intended, again, to really set the vision for the future as part of the first day. And then the second day, we're going to talk about how to implement that vision and how we would advance CCTA as an organization to support that vision. From a staff perspective, I had the kind of proud opportunity to attend the California Transportation Foundation Award Gala, where Terry Ann Grover was recognized in completing the CARL program by CalCog. So a big round of applause for her. It's very exciting. And so she's, I think, the third person that's been graduated from that program. So it's a really great program, really exciting to see everyone progress in their careers. We also put out a notification to hire a director of mobility program. So if you know anyone that's entrepreneurial, creative, and forward thinking, send them my way. And then I also wanted to, Brian mentioned this, but I also wanted to recognize Yuli Sang. She is our new finance manager here at the authority. She's just been outstanding, been a great fit for us here at CCTA. And so I'm looking forward to all of you to meet her in person at a future board meeting. So, but we are growing at CCTA, and it's really helping the staff as we continue to, deliver the program. That's all I have. Any questions?
Okay.
It sounds like Representative Peoples might have a question.
Yeah, Chris Peoples?
Sorry, it's not a question. I just didn't unmute myself fast enough. Just one announcement. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, there's a memorial service for Norm Mineta down in San Jose, and I will be down there. As you all know, Norm was in the camps as a kid, rose to be the chair of T&I, wrote Ice-T, which is what gives us all our existence, and then went on to serve as 2 different cabinet members and was the Secretary of Transportation during 9/11. Remarkable man, and it'll be good to honor him tomorrow.
Great, thank you. So if there's no other comments, then just we'll let you know the calendars are in your packet. We have a board meeting coming up in July. And with that, we will adjourn to our next regular meeting on July 20th at 6 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Happy 4th, everybody.